guys, what's up and welcome back to the Alpha Girl Confidence Podcast. I'm so excited to share today's conversation with you where I sat down with Asia Mape, who is the founder of I Love to Watch You Play. It's an amazing website resource for parents, for athletes, for coaches. So make sure you check out the links in the show notes below. But this was such an amazing conversation where we talked about parental pressure, how to toe the line between supporting your kids versus putting too much pressure on them. We talked about her experience with navigating her daughter quitting sports, what she learned along the way, how to look for signs of burnout, and kind of what to do when you notice that your child is feeling burnt out or maybe wants to quit. We talked about a lot of things around mental health, even including like how to set boundaries with your kid around phone usage and how to help your kids kind of navigate their own choices and the consequence to those choices. So we dove into a lot of amazing stuff. I know you're going to find this episode valuable. And just a little bit about Asia. She is an incredible human doing such amazing work. She is also a 4-time Emmy Award-winning journalist and sports television producer for Fox Sports, ESPN, TNT, NFL Network, NBC Sports, you name it. And she's also covered the most high-profile sporting events in the world, including the Olympics, the Super Bowl, the NBA playoffs. And she's also, most importantly, a mother of 3 daughters who are playing sports or have played sports, and a former Division I basketball player. So I am so excited for you to listen to the episode. If you find it valuable for you, I would love if you would share it with someone else. This episode is really, really important. I know that it's going to really help a lot of people. And if you're listening to this episode and you've been listening to this podcast, you're someone that gets it, right? You're someone that understands the value and the importance of these conversations. So I encourage you to share this episode with other parents, maybe parents that aren't aware of this and that these kind of conversations aren't necessarily on the top of their mind. Because I know in order for us to change youth sports, to improve the environment for our daughters, for our kids, it starts with us having these conversations and sharing these conversations. So again, please enjoy the episode and make sure you check out the links below to learn more. And I'm excited to see you inside the episode. Enjoy. What's up, Asia? Welcome to the Alpha Girl Confidence Podcast. I'm really looking forward to having you on. The work that you do is so incredible, so needed. So excited to finally have this conversation.
Thanks, Shay. So am I. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear just you and I just officially connected. So I really, other than viewing your website and hearing from other people, I don't really know a whole lot like about your journey that led you to, I love to watch you play. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey as, an athlete, as a parent, and kind of what led you to doing the work that you do now.
Yeah, I think I should probably start way back where like in every home video you can kind of see or at least hear a ball bouncing, and occasionally you'll see me dribble through the shot. I loved sports. I had 2 older brothers who played sports, and so they were kind of my idols, and I always wanted to keep up with them. And I got a lot of positive feedback from sports. I was pretty good at it from a young age. I played everything. And then, I think it kind of became also a good distraction. Not to get right into serious stuff, but my mom was a single mom, and times were tough when we were younger, and I think I used sports kind of as a way to kind of get away and do my own thing. I'd go out and shoot baskets at the garage, or the outside of the garage for hours at a time, and so it kind of served a lot of purposes for me as a young person. And then growing up, I was always playing sports. I ended up focusing on basketball. That became my favorite one, and I think I was the best at basketball. And had a great experience with sports. We played in a state championship and won it in my hometown of Annandale, Virginia. And again, I think I drew a lot of positive things from it. And sports have kind of touched my entire life. I went into, I played basketball in college for a short time, and went into sports journalism. All my bridesmaids were from my basketball team. You know, it's sort of been like an ongoing theme of a real positive thing in my life. And so, you know, eventually I was working in sports television for many, many years, and I was doing, you know, Super Bowls and Olympics and all kinds of really interesting, exciting things, and knew a lot of, you know, experts in the field and athletes and coaches. And a friend approached me. I had my own girls at this time. I have 3 daughters. And she was like, we should do something around youth sports. You know, it's kind of crazy. And I was like, it is crazy. And I was like, wow, I was kind of blown away by the amount of time, the amount of money. But I'll tell you, Shay, I was really caught up into it as well. And, you know, it's hard when you have these little babies and they're finally doing something, you can kind of see how they are against the world, and you get really wrapped up in it. And the website originally started more of like, okay, let's use all these experts in the fields and these coaches, and we can share all this knowledge. And, you know, of course, we always wanted to help parents, was always sort of the backbone of the site, but it's really morphed and grown. I think we've been doing it, or I've been doing it 8 years. My partner, she's no longer involved in the site, but she was certainly huge in getting it set up. And, you know, it's really become something completely different, which is helping parents like me, a lot of them who are competitive, who love sports, you know, do the things that will keep their kids healthy and happy and loving and enjoying the sports, instead of having, you know, all the negative stuff that comes with the climate of today's world.
Right. And I think it's like so powerful coming from you. Like, right. Like for me, I can only speak to parents from an athlete perspective because I'm not a parent. I can speak on my own experience, but for you, it's like you've been there as a high level athlete and as a parent with 3 daughters who are going through everything, right? So I think it's so valuable, you know, that you have just this different perspective, and which is why I was so excited to have you on. And for you, like as a parent, I guess a personal question, but what's been the hardest thing for you in navigating the youth sports world that it is today?
I think it's kind of where I really hit on a lot of my topics on the site, because it's what is really meaningful to me. I think parents in general, Shay, we want the best for our kids. And I think there's no parent out there, for the most part, that's not going to have the kid at the center of what they're doing. I think we just get lost. We can't find our way. And I think for me, I mean, talk about the difference of how I handled my oldest daughter and her sports to my youngest. It's like night and day. And I think it's really getting caught up in all of it, the return on investment, the energy you put in, the money, the time, and keeping that balance and keeping perspective about what youth sports should be all about. And I don't think it's an easy thing to do for most of us.
Right. I was reading one of your blogs, and you brought up, you know, that one of your oldest daughter, I believe, quit. And is her name Piper? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good memory.
Yes.
Glad I got her name right. So yeah, I was reading that, and something that comes up a lot is you were talking about, you know, that you had spent so much time, so much money, you know, in helping her to excel in her sport. And I hear this from athletes and parents as well, where it's like maybe they're thinking about quitting or whatever that may be. But then it's like, oh, but we've put so much time and we've put so much energy and we've put so much money into this that I don't want it to be a waste. Like, I don't want it to go to waste. Like, what are your thoughts on, like, do you think it's actually going to waste? Like, I'd love to kind of have a discussion and hear your thoughts on like that specific thing.
Well, I think that's a poor word choice, right? It's never going to waste. I mean, even now, my daughter, we laugh, like most people that meet her now would never even know that she was an incredible athlete. She has nothing to do with sports. But I see the value even in her art, even in every story she tells. She's in college right now at art school, and she's doing the extra work, and she's running around. She has that grit. She has that ability to push herself that is hard to get anywhere else besides sports or something similar to sports. And so I don't love that word waste. I think what happens to a lot of us parents is we get caught up on this ride of like, okay, my daughter, for example, would say she wanted to play in the Olympics. She wanted to play in college. And so you like go all out. You're like, parents, as I said, we want to do whatever it is they want, really. I don't even think it's like that it has to be just sports. If she was like saying this about art back then, I mean, we were a sporty family, don't get me wrong, and I write and talk about this a lot. I think sports were like a natural sort of, I think they all felt like that is what our family does. But I think parents in general, we just want to see them succeed. We want to help them reach and achieve their dreams. But when it gets too much about that end result, the dream or whatever, we really kind of lose our way. And I think that return on investment is like, even not just for ourselves, but for them. You've put all this time into it. And where are we going to go? And I do think, as you pointed out, one of the most important things to remember is it's not wasted. And everybody stops playing sports at some point. The majority of us before college. And so quitting, as I even wrote in that title, is not really a great word. You stop doing something and you find something else. Like, that's part of life, right?
Right. Yeah, I guess it's interesting, like pro athletes, when they quit, we call it retiring, right? But if a youth athlete quits, we call it quitting. And yeah, that's like not a great word for it. It's like they're just moving on to things that they love more. It's like, and so yeah, I think it's so important to look at, you said the return on investment isn't about like, oh, did they get a college scholarship? It's did they learn? What challenges did they face that now they're able to take that in other areas of their life? And I know it's like not seeing the financial return on investment like may be difficult, but like that's the smallest part of it and what a parent really wants for their kid. And I think it's important for any athletes listening too to know, because I just had a girl say like, I feel like I'm working so hard and it's just all going to waste. Right. And it's like, no, it's not going to waste. Like you're learning so much. You're becoming such a better athlete and person. It's like, just keep working. And if sports isn't for you, like, then you're going to be able to take the things you learn and something else, in your life. And so I think I just wanted to ask that question because I think it's important, especially now in sports when there is so much invested into it and it can just completely, take over a family's whole life like sports can. It becomes the identity.
Yeah, and I think that's such a dangerous path to go down that a lot of us go down, and there's some guardrails that you have to put in, and there's questions that you should be asking yourselves. And, one of those is the money question, right? Are these choices, this club team, this dream, this goal, like aligned with our family values and with what our family has going on right now? And if you can't answer yes, I have these 3 questions to all of them, it's probably not a good choice. But I think we really get caught up in it. And then there's that resentment and that anger because you really couldn't afford it. You really shouldn't have done that. You really kind of knew that wasn't aligned. And so, I think that's where a lot of those frustration feelings come from parents as well.
Yeah, that you brought up resentment. I could totally see a parent being like, I spent all my weekends, at your sports, and a lot of parents do. And I don't know if I necessarily felt that resentment from my parents, but I could see that could be an easy path to go down.
And it really is. And it's not even, I think a lot of times it gets misplaced, right? Like it's resentment, you're mad at the coach. Well, if the coach would have played you more, you could be on that other team. You could be in having a college scholarship. And it's like creating this sort of narrative and path for your athlete from an early spot that really puts all that pressure on them, puts all that pressure on the family, makes us crazy, and scream and act out of control. And it's really, something that I think parents need to talk to each other more about. And I write about this a lot where, the more we're talking to each other, the better it can be for our athletes, for our team. Because if I say we shouldn't all go to that camp, that's crazy to pay $500 for that. 5 people on your team, 10 people probably agree, but no one wants to say anything. We don't want to be the only ones to not go. We don't want to be our kid to miss out. And so we're just all sort of like not in it together. We're all looking at each other as competition. We're all like really not aligned with what's best for our kids. We're more aligned with, oh my God, if they don't do this and everyone does, then they'll be penalized and they won't make that travel team, then they won't get on the next whatever, you know. And it's really just created such a volatile situation.
Yeah, that's so true. Like the competition piece amongst parents, right? I think it was your blog that I read where it was like, we don't want to share our daughters or sons like trainers because it's like it's a competition and we don't want to share resources. Like that's such an interesting thing. Like where do you think that comes from? Is it a parental ego, a keeping up with the Joneses type thing? Status?
I think it's all the same thing that we're talking about. It's like you start to view, especially on club teams, that you're competing not against other teams, because that's the way it's designed now. You're competing against your own teammates to make that team, to then get playing time, to then get recruited. It's all about this, you know, path. The end is justifying the means, and it's really so unhealthy. And I don't know what the solve is for the big picture. Like, I love the organizations out there like Aspen Institute and Changing the Game Project and all these different that really talk a lot about, you know, the system is broken, right?
Right, for sure.
But my focus and my goal is to help parents work within the system that is right now, because I don't know when it's all going to get straightened out. And in the meantime, our kids' bodies are breaking down and their mental health is a mess. So like there has to be, you know, something done today, not tomorrow, not when they fix the structure, not when whatever. Like, how are you going to help your child right this minute?
Right. So not waiting on the system to change, but looking, you know, at your own family and saying, how can we
100%.
make, like, I'm thinking from a parent's perspective listening, right? Like they've got a son or a daughter that is playing for a high level club. Their kid wants to go play in college. The club team plays all year round. They do showcases. They do all these things. The parent wants to take a break, but they feel like they can't because they're going to get left behind, because if they don't show up to the showcase, then they might get kicked off the team. Like, what would you advise like a parent? Because I know that happens all the time. Like, what would you advise a parent to do in that situation?
Well, I don't know if you've seen, I post this a lot, but there's this like graph of like the up and down of the development of a youth athlete, right? There's a big picture. So if you're first off, if your child wants to play in college, right, it has to be their goal. If they don't want to play in college, then what are you doing? Like, go on the second team. All of it is just crazy making. If they want to play in college and that's their dream, then you have to ride out those patches. And what I think is, sure, there's certain times, right? If it's going into your junior year and this is when it's really, that's not the best time to take a break. But sometimes they have to, by the way. But I do think that parents need to look at their child, not be worried at all about what everyone else is doing. Because here's the bottom line, just like my daughter, if you don't do these things for them when you see it's really become apparent and necessary, they're not going to make it anyways. They're going to hate it. They're going to burn out. Their bodies are going to break down. They're not. I know so many incredible athletes that stopped and didn't want to play in college, right? It's like our club teams are putting a bunch of eggs in a bag, throwing them against the wall and saying, wow, we got 2 that didn't break. Yay for us. We did so
That's
good.
so true. Yeah.
And it should be looking at all of them. And it's hard because not always is the coach or the director or whoever on board with that, right? If you need to take time. I think if you catch it early enough, you can do small things. Hey, let's take a break today. Let's go get ice cream. Let's go to the movies. Let's do something just to shake it up. They're on such a, a vicious cycle of training, school, this, that. Break it up. Let them know that you see them, that you hear them, that that they're more than just what they're doing out on the field, that they matter. I think so often we get caught up that it's all about, are they bringing home A's? Are they in APs? And are they getting enough playing time? And we lose focus that there's this human inside that is hurting, that is confused, that doesn't know. And I think we really have to take time. And a lot of times, the last thing they want to do, right, is go spend time with us. But I think we have to force that issue and at least give them a break, whether it's with us or not, and say, take the day off, take the week off, whatever it is. And look, if a coach isn't supportive, if a club isn't supportive, change. I mean, you can't do much about your high school situation sometimes, but if it's club, change, because you don't want your kid being influenced by people like that anyways.
Wow, there's a lot of good stuff there. I just finished reading. I don't know if you've read the book What Made Maddie Run.
I know it well, and I've definitely read a lot of it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I actually just finished that like last night. And from the beginning, it's just like what you're talking about. There's always this pressure to get the right grades and get the highest test score, and it's just like it's like life is like, really, we teach our kids from such a young age that it's about performing. Right? Not living life, but performing life, right? And being this someone that can easily marketable, right? Whether that's in a job or in a team, a college scholarship. And in that quest to be the greatest performer, I think we lose sight of who we are as a human being. 100%. And it completely degrades, it can degrade a person's self-worth, when they retire or when they get injured and they're like, I don't know who I am because I'm not playing my sport anymore. And so I think it's so important, like you said, that if you catch the signs early on, you can do little things. Take a day off here and there. Take a weekend off. It doesn't need to be you're taking a whole month off or a whole tournament off. There's times for that. But I think it's just about like planning time to do nothing. Planning time to do things you enjoy, because when you don't do those things, burnout's pretty much inevitable at that point.
It's inevitable. And look, people, I think part of the problem is everyone's going to go through burnout at points. Professional athletes have gone through it. Olympic athletes, our youth athletes go through it. When you do something over and over, you get burned out. So it doesn't need to be like this crazy, oh my God, if we're, as we're saying, you catch it early, you do these things to help with it, you normalize the feelings around it, and then like long term, I think the problem comes when we don't want to go on every kid's whim, right? Those of us with teenagers know that at a certain point, all of a sudden, sports become, they're less interested in sports, they're less interested in everything. They want to go to parties, they want to hang. Right. And so it's like, you can't just like let them say, oh, I'm done with soccer because like, you're like, why?
Yeah.
There is that. So I think it's like really listening, really seeing if the pattern continues, doing those things to catch it early on. And eventually, like my daughter, it really wasn't for her. Sports weren't her thing. Art was her thing. And it took me too long to figure that out. It took me too long to make changes. I don't think they can even process it a lot either. Like, I think they've put a lot of time into it. They also have these feelings they're letting people down. They don't necessarily come out and say, I'm done. Yeah. But you can see it. All of a sudden, they don't really want to go. All of a sudden, their play on the field is suffering. So you have to be really sensitive and aware and catch those signs so that you can help navigate it and find which path is best for them.
Yeah. And I mean, you just mentioned a couple of the signs, right? Like they don't want to be there as much. Maybe their play decreases. Like what are some other signs that parents should look out for, as it relates to burnout?
I think they start to make a lot of excuses.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I want to try another sport. I'm hurt, and you're like, they're maybe not you know your kid, and you know, like, if they were excited to go to practice every day and now they're not. And look, teenagers especially have hormones coming and all these things. There's a lot of changes, and so you want to be careful, like, that it's not something more serious than even burnout, you know, or whatever.
Yeah,
but
right.
it's just any sort of change that, you know, I think sometimes you can see it on the field. Even you just watch them and you're like, they just don't seem to have that energy around it. They don't seem to have the joy around it anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it doesn't even mean that. Look, how many of us put our kids in soccer because that's the first thing they can do, and they keep them in soccer. It doesn't have to be this horrible thing. Oh my God, let them try other sports. I know so many kids who have completely stopped all sports, changed sports, and come back and been amazing and gone on and played in college. Like, I think we have to see that big picture and make a change for them and see where it goes. And it could be art, like my daughter, or theater, or, you know, or debate, or whatever it is. Like, we just have to sort of let them guide that process.
Yeah, and I think it's like, when, you know, you're talking about being really aware of, like, you know, those little changes. And I think when they do express, hey, you know, oh, I'm hurt, or like, oh, I don't want to go to practice today. I think instead of just being like, no, you're going to practice, it's like, it's like really being curious and exploring like the deeper, you know, cause of this. Like, okay, tell me, like, why you don't want to go to, and like really opening up that door for communication so that they feel like they can be safe expressing. Because when I was a kid, there was no way I would have been straight out like, I want to quit. It was just, I expressed it in other ways, but it wasn't ever explored. And I know my parents were doing the best that they could, but I think just being really curious and asking those questions from that perspective is going to get you the answer more likely than just continuing to push and push.
100%. And I don't know how much of your audience is younger, but the earlier you can start that curiosity, the questioning, the allowing the space for them to have feelings around all this stuff. Because once you get into a pattern where, and I did this for sure with my older daughter, where you don't allow that space and they stop trusting that they can actually share that information, because one too many times you're like, oh, come on, you're not hurt. Like, you know, that's not the way you respond to that. You know what I mean? And I think you do that a few times and that's it. Like, I don't want to say like you can't get it back and that you can't figure it out, but like, if there are people listening that have younger kids, you have to start that early, because when they're young, a lot of times it's fun and it's easy and you're not dealing with these problems. But if you practice that sort of line of communication and the open two-way communication, listening to their feelings, respecting their feelings, I think it will bode a lot better for you when it is a little more difficult and more stakes seem to be on the line later.
Yeah, and one thing I was thinking about when you're talking about your daughter doing different things, it's like my niece is just turned 7, and like my sister is doing this really cool thing where they're trying out like a new sport every season. So last season it was basketball, before it was dance, this upcoming winter is basketball, and so they're just trying like all these different sports, and eventually, you know, she may choose to do one or she may choose to do something completely different. But I think it's really cool to see, like, because when we were kids we never did that, and I'm like, that's really cool that you're kind of just trying out and exploring all these things, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's like your kid doesn't need to specialize at 10 years old, for heaven's sakes, you know what I mean?
No, not only is that good for so many reasons, right? Because the earlier you specialize, the more problems you're going to have later. There's like studies done, the less you're really attuned or found your right sport. But the ability to do different sports and move different muscles and work different parts of your body is going to be huge, not only in the development of their athleticism, but in their injury prevention. And it doesn't have to even be like trying sports in a league. It can just be at the park and moving your body in different ways. And I know they see this a lot in basketball, and some other sports where they, at a very young age, there's like summer league, everything. I mean, those are almost every sport nowadays, but for some reason, basketball is really prevalent. And their bodies are only built to, in one way. They're building muscles, the same muscles. They're putting the same stresses on those muscles. They're not building the muscles on either side of those muscles. And it really ends up, I mean, I know that I've read some amazing articles about the NBA and even college basketball. The athletes' bodies are just breaking down. They're not able to withstand all those years of the same movements over and over.
Yeah, I mean, it really is kind of, you know, not to go too deep into the physical stuff because I'm not necessarily an expert there, but, you know, it's like, are we wanting to build our kids to be basketball athletes, or are we wanting them to be just incredible, well-developed human beings that can move well in life? You know what I mean? Because if you specialize in one thing, it's like you're going to have injuries probably for the rest of your life. But if you can kind of explore and dabble, and not just with sports, but you know, running around in the woods and like, you know, just hiking, doing all that kind of stuff, hiking and biking and like all that kind of stuff. It's like they're going to be such a better athlete and love the thing so much more than if they're just solely focused on that one thing, you know, when they're 10, 11, 12 years old.
Completely. And finding things your family can do together. I have this one family that I've worked with, and they have kids that play water polo. But the whole family is super beach centered. So they ski, I mean, they surf together, they do all this swim, they do all these beach activities. Like, it's just this lifestyle. It becomes an active lifestyle instead of just like you go and watch your child play sport and then they play it again and again and again. And it's just such a healthier way. I mean, I do like to add when we're talking about things like this, because the realistic, like there's the Pollyanna, yeah, it would be so great, you just play and dabble. If your kid is motivated and wants to play after high school, right? Probably by age 13-ish, they probably should start doing something a lot more. I just like to say that because I think when you have those kids and you listen to this and you feel like, oh, well, my kid only wants to play this because they're so motivated, that's fine. And like after 13, 14, you know, if they want to do that, but early on is what Shay and I are talking about now.
Absolutely.
Everything, have them do everything under the sun, and then later start that focused work.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because age 13, 14, if they're wanting and if they love that one sport, like let them specialize, let them like go work really hard in that one sport. But before that, it's like just do as much things as you can. So I'm glad that you clarified that, because I think a lot of parents can maybe feel a little bit guilty and like, oh no, my kid wants to just do this. It's
or you're like, there's no way they're going to make that team if we let them play everything. The other thing on that note is I hate this talk when people use professional athletes and say, oh, they played 3 and 4 sports, so you should play 3 and 4 sports. Okay, a professional athlete, a linebacker who's humongous, can run the sprints and the 50-yard dash faster than almost any human. Those are super freak humans. And so to use that as like the guidepost for all of that also frustrates me. They can play 3 sports because they're incredible, and any coach would have taken them on any team, no matter if they missed half the season. And so that's not fair when you compare it to your average kid that, you know, oh, well, you should play 3 sports, but then like, okay, that doesn't even make sense for some people. And so I also don't love that conversation, because it's so like, come on, like, okay, a professional athlete played 3 sports. Wow. Like, you can't really compare those things.
No. So I'm glad I didn't bring the professional athlete thing up then.
I you know, what, you know, there's some benefit to it, obviously. And, you know, you can see that they are well-rounded, but I think for the average kid, it doesn't really play into their...
I agree. I love that. So I wanted to, I mean, this whole conversation has been amazing, and we've already kind of talked about parental pressure in a way, but I think there's such a delicate balance, and I know it's probably something that parents struggle with. Like, how do I support my kid in a way without putting like this pressure on them that feels like it's too much? Like, how is there a line that like talk a little bit about support versus pressure?
Yeah, that's a biggie. And I struggle with this with my youngest still, right?
Yeah.
Because and I think there's this saying that, look, if your goals don't match your actions, one of them has to change. And I literally just said that to her the other day. I was like, I don't want to be the one that is like, you should do this, you haven't done this, you should set up a training for yourself, whatever. She has big dreams and goals. And I run into this all the time. And the way I handle it that's a lot different than before, right, is the conversations. It's exactly what you said. Where are you at? Where's your head at? What are you aligned with? I'll get behind it. You need time. Like we have now that ability to communicate that I didn't have before. That being said, I think it's letting the kid guide it, keeping them on path. I do think there is this thing with the cell phones. Oof. And if they're like human beings. It's almost impossible to put that down and make a choice to go for a run. You know what I mean? Or to go do an extra little shooting in the backyard. And I do think like taking the phone out of the equation sometimes can be a big motivator for them to, without you pressuring them to do something, but okay, you're gonna, the phone is going away for 2 hours. You can do homework and go shoot baskets. I mean, these are just like practical tips.
Yeah,
but
I love that.
I spend a lot of the time on the website talking about this, and support is a smiling face in the crowd. It's not the
right.
watching. It's being there. That life is hard for these kids. Sports are hard for these kids. The coach can handle all that stuff. You are there to support, to catch them when they fall, to be a smiling face, to not bring up, once they've walked off that field, they've talked about the loss with their teammates, their coach, their other friend as they walk to the car, then you have to talk about it. Let them guide that. It's the fine line between support and pressure. You have to be there to talk to them, to be there for them, but it's guided by their desires, what they want to do. And you also, I think parents can use like, here's how I explain it, like subtle pressure too, like, you got to eat this, you got to go to bed, you got like, it's this feeling that sports matter more than anything. And it doesn't, and it doesn't have to be directly like, I don't think with Piper, I was ever like, no water polo, this or whatever, but it's that pressure is all around everything they're doing. So it's like, no, you really shouldn't go do that party. You do have a game tomorrow. You might be late. You might be tired. Did you eat this? Did you eat? It's like, it's basically just making sports the center of everything. And it's hard. It's hard when like, what would be best to get a result, but I think you have to step back and see them as a whole person and this human that has their own, they don't care maybe as much about the game, they might want to go to that party. And like, you just have to be flexible and willing to work with them and what they want to do.
I love that. I mean, like, what are your thoughts? I'm just thinking of like, let's say that your kid wants to go to a party and they have like an early game. What about a question where a parent could be like, hey, okay, you have a game in the morning, like you have a choice to go to the party, but what do you think would be the best decision for you to play your best? Like, I don't know if that's still like a little bit too much pressure and like kind of letting them make the choice, but also letting them be aware of the consequences of that choice. Like, I know that may still be putting the sport first. Like, what are your thoughts on like that kind of question?
I think that's really smart. I love that. And also, if you do that within guidelines, right, with guardrails, like, I mean, I assume people have curfews and this anyways, or maybe if it's a game night, you want to make sure you're home by X time or whatever. But I think what you said has so much value because they're really never going to learn any of these lessons unless they fail, unless they feel tired, unless they didn't play that good. And so I think it's hard as parents. It was hard for me to step back and allow that failure, but it's so important because then they actually get it. They actually lived it, feel it, breathe it, and know it. Whereas we can, talk till we're blue in the face about what they should do.
Yeah. I mean, I had a parent reach out to me on Instagram a couple weeks ago, and, she's talking about how her daughter isn't practicing on her own, doesn't want to practice on her own. And mom's worried that she's not going to make the team. And she was young, she was I think 11. And my kind of major piece of advice was if she doesn't want to practice and, she knows the consequences of not practicing on her own, maybe you just let her not practice if she doesn't want to. And if she doesn't make the team, she's going to learn that consequence on her own. And I know that is probably a lot harder said than done, but I think it's so important to let them make their own decisions in a way. Obviously there's times where you got to put your foot down, right? But let them make some decisions and have a little bit more autonomy so that they can see when I do X, Y happens, and this isn't the consequence that I want. So next time maybe I'll make a different decision.
100%. I agree with that. And, I'll use an example of, so when I was kind of learning these lessons from Piper, and then I have a middle daughter who plays soccer, and I was, it was evolving day to day. I was kind of wow. And I had seen a TikTok by this guy talk a lot about where he made some funny TikTok about his dad yelling at him in the backseat or being in the back of his car and getting yelled at. But there were I think it's probably up to 20,000 comments now, Shay, from kids who, it was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever read. All pouring their heart out about their parents and the pressure, and they won't let them quit, and they think that, and I was wow. And I was just I think I'm doing that. And so as I was sort of transitioning through this, my middle daughter was probably a sophomore in high school, maybe. I started pulling back from that pressuring, from being really overly involved in her decision making because she was coming up on the college time. And the most miraculous thing happens when you do that. When all of a sudden it's not your dreams, your goals, you're pushing. Wow, all of a sudden they're owning it. All of a sudden, without my pressure, she's wanting to do more. It's now her journey. It's her everything. And guess what? When you own something, you have a lot more energy around doing things and doing it the right way. And I would think that would even be maybe more subtle, but also apparent for younger kids too. But when it was literally I pulled back, she came forward. And it's been her own thing now for years. But I saw that in action. It was breathtaking.
There you go. So it's not just us talking about it, but parents that are listening, I don't have the experience. Asia does. And just that personal experience of you seeing that happen right in front of your eyes was probably just so amazing for both you and your daughter to kind of go through that. And I know it probably wasn't easy to do. I'm sure there was some resistance. But yeah, I guess one of the last things I want to talk about, and you brought up the phone thing. So I love talking about technology and how it affects, everyone, but especially, teenagers. So I'd love to talk about, I guess, ways that you have worked with technology, with whether it be clients or your own kids, to help them. And I know you mentioned, which I love, okay, 2 hours, no phone, go do what you want to do. I think that's so cool because now it's oh no, I don't have my phone. What do I do? And so I love that. Is there any other tactical tools or even just perspective shifts that you can share to help parents better, I guess, help their kids to have a better relationship with their devices?
Yeah, well, I think I hear so many of even my friends say well, they're on the phone all the time, or and I'm well, did you ever take it away? Like, I don't know where it became this thing that we can't take a kid's phone away, and we can't have some rules around that, or some space. I do know that what can be tricky is that their homework is on it, their app to study and this, I get this a lot from my daughter. I'm like, okay, your phone's gone for 2 hours, do something, or do your homework or whatever. Well, I was doing my math cue cards on the math app on the phone. Right. And you're always, or my friend was texting me the blah, 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 that I needed for the da da da, and so you gotta get like. But I think when you just actually take some time, ask them to put it away. I know I have a friend who told me they have a bunch of kids, and they would put the charging station in this like center spot in the kitchen, and so the phones had to be there from like 5 to 9 when so they'd have dinner, they'd do their homework or whatever, and they could come and like check it or whatever. But the fact that they were all plugged in there charging, but no one's going to sit there forever on the phone. And so it just gave like a little break. I think every family has to kind of figure their way around it.
For sure.
I've gone in a lot of different directions. I was very strict when they were younger. And then I went through a point, I think during COVID, where I shared like a photo on my personal Instagram. It was like all 3 of them were just, I was like, I don't know what's happened. I've just given up. I have come in and out of it, but it's a necessary evil. There's a lot of helpful things on the phone nowadays.
Right.
Even to like training apps and workouts that they're doing on the phone and different things. So it's hard to figure it out, but it's like everything else. It's all about balance.
Yeah, and just like setting boundaries, right? Like I think just the literal like, okay, from 4 to 6 or whatever the hours are, like we don't use our phones. You can do your homework, you can go run around, you can go, draw, like whatever, but you're just not going to be with your phone. I think creating boundaries is something simple, maybe not easy, but simple. And then also looking at the parents, like how much are you on your phone?
True.
Like for me, like when I grew up, we didn't have cell phones, not until I was in middle school. But now it's so funny. I was just with my family for the week, and I don't know if my dad will listen to this, but like he's on his phone. Actually, not my dad, but like grandparents and parents, like of my parents and my grandparents, I think are on their phone way more than my generation is. And so it was just like a funny realization that I'm like, man, my stepmom can't even be at dinner like without checking her phone constantly, or you know what I mean? So I think it's first of all, take a look, how much are you using your phone? Because your kid's going to watch you. And then just setting boundaries, I think is really valuable. And I think your kid will find a lot of more fun, enriching activities to do when they don't have the thing right in front of them.
And, I just want to add one thing to that, Shay. Every time I've taken it away for long extended periods, like if one of my kids was in trouble, they typically like it.
I know, and that's the crazy thing.
Say that. And I think our kids actually want those boundaries, and they want that. And if we're not imposing that on them, they're not going to do it on their own. And so
I agree.
It's something that, hands down, every single one of my kids, when I've done that, they have really, really loved that time. It's like a relief for them. It's like, I think that kids right now are really aware of how it's affecting them, and they know that it's not good for them in a lot of ways. So I think that's really cool that they're so aware of it. Whereas the older generations, I don't think maybe they're quite as aware of it maybe. And I could be generalizing, but just from what I've seen, because a lot of the girls I work with, they do talk about, I don't want to be on my phone as much. Like I want to have time without it. I think you're right.
Yeah, they're aware. And so I think it's what you said is like, they're probably not going to set those boundaries on their own. So can you set them as a family? And just like you said, your kids enjoy it when they don't have it. And I've experienced that too.
Look, they have the brightest minds in science, creating these apps, creating these things that are meant to be addictive.
Yes.
Our kids can't face that foe on their own.
Yeah, neither can we.
Neither can we. And so, it's sort of like you have to take those steps for them sometimes and do that.
Yeah, I love that. Well, yeah, I feel like we could probably have a 3-hour conversation about everything that we've talked about. This was such an amazing convo, and you have so many great resources on your website. So I'd love for you to just share where people can find, your blog, other resources that you have so that they can kind of continue to dive into your stuff.
Yeah, thanks again, Shay. I've really enjoyed our conversation too. The website is ilovetowatchyouplay.com, all written out. Facebook is I have a pretty good group on there that's pretty engaged, and that's I Love to Watch You Play as well. The Instagram is at the I Love to Watch You Play, because someone had
someone took it.
It's like, if someone has it on private, I keep trying to be friends with her. She has like 8 followers. I'm like, come on, have it back. And then I'm on Twitter. I'm on, pretty much everything.
So let's have all the listeners go to at I Love to Watch You Play on Instagram, send her a message, and then we'll tell her to get rid of her name so that you can take it.
Exactly.
We'll just bombard her.
She has to be friends with you to even accept a message. I'm like, please.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Oh, and I also did just start up, because I have 3 girls. I love what's happening in women's sports right now. And I love talking about women's sports, and I feel like I'm more of an expert on girls. So I did just start I Love to Watch Her Play on Instagram as well, where I'm going to be creating a lot of content. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, there's so many cool things happening in women's sports, soccer, basketball, especially by me in the Bay Area. So yeah, I'm excited for it too. Well, Asia, thank you so much for coming on. I absolutely love this convo, and I know that parents listening are going to get so much out of it. So thanks again for your time, and hopefully we can have you on again in the future.
I would love that. Thank you so much, Shay.